figures are startling. An estimated 1.5 million people were destitute in the UK at some point in 2017, 365,000 of them children. This is the conclusion of a report published by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, JRF. Campbell Robb, chief executive of the charity, said actions by the government, local authorities and utility companies is leading to destitution by design. Social Security should be an anchor holding people steady against powerful currents such as rising costs, insecure housing and jobs, and low pay, but people are instead becoming destitute with no clear way out. When is someone considered destitute? Photo, Richard Stonehouse, Getty Images. In short, it's about not having enough money to be able to eat, heat a home or keep a roof over your head. The report defined anyone who lacked 2 or more of 6 basic essentials over the past month because they could not afford them as destitute. The essentials are: shelter, have slept rough for 1 or more nights; food, have had fewer than 2 meals a day for 2 or more days; heating their home, have been unable to do this for 5 or more days; lighting their home, have been unable to do this for 5 or more days; appropriate clothing and footwear; basic toiletries, soap, shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrush. As the graph below shows, food was the essential most commonly lacked, followed by clothing and toiletries. Nearly half of people lacked 3 or more essentials. Who is most likely to be destitute? Getty Images, single men under 35. 3/4 of those deemed destitute were born in the UK. Northern cities and some London boroughs had the highest numbers of people experiencing destitution. 2/3 of all people classed as destitute were living in a flat or house of their own. What are the factors leading to destitution? The report blamed benefits sanctions, low benefit levels, delays in receiving benefit payments, high housing costs, pressures, financial and otherwise, facing people with poor health and disability, lack of eligibility for benefits for people such as migrants, and harsh and uncoordinated debt recovery practices by authorities and utility companies. Is destitution on the rise? Food banks have reported record demand because of problems with universal credit. Photo, Richard Stonehouse, Getty Images. According to the research, levels of destitution actually fell by 25% between 2015 and 2017. This was attributed to a reduction in job seekers' allowance benefit sanctions, lower unemployment levels and migration falling. But the JRF warns more people could be at risk of destitution after universal credit is rolled out across the country because of the sanction rate. Universal credit is being phased in gradually throughout the year. The rollout schedule is here. What did people say about their experience? Woman aged between 25 and 45, because I had some arrears, which I knew nothing about until they told me. So, I've got to pay all that back, so I'm living on about maybe £200 for a month, and by the time I pay out my electric, or what debts I've got, it leaves me with nothing, so I've got to rely on the food bank or neighbors for food. Woman aged between 25 and 45, my ex-partner left me with loads and loads of arrears on the rent. I'm making up the rent arrears, as well as paying bedroom tax, which is £17 a week. Straight away £44 goes out of our benefits to bedroom tax and arrears. The food bank don't get quite a lot from them. As I say, we couldn't have got by without them. Man aged between 25 and 45, they made me go 8 weeks without any money. I did have to live basically out of a food bank, and how can I pay for heating and that when I didn't have any money coming in? Man aged 25 to 45, I went to the vicar quite a lot and he helped me with food and stuff, and chip shops were giving us free food, chips and fish and chips free. What is the reaction? New figures have revealed shocking numbers of Britons visiting food banks. Image, Justin Sullivan, Getty. Emma Revy, chief executive at the Trestle Trust, said their network of food banks handed out more than 1.3 million emergency packages to people in 2017. The people most likely to need a food bank are people with health conditions or disability, families and single parents. How did this report estimate levels of destitution? The research team carried out a one-week survey of 2,905 people who were using 103 crisis services in 16 locations across the UK. They were asked questions to see if they were destitute by the JRF's definition and on other characteristics. This data was used to estimate the total number of service users in each location and how many would be considered destitute. Ms. Revy told our volunteers see firsthand the effect benefit problems, debts or being unable to afford the very basics has on people's lives. Findings are stark, but they also show a way forwards. The decline in destitution, due to a fall in benefit sanctions, shows just what an impact our benefits system could have in protecting people from hunger. Nick Forbes, senior vice chairman of the Local Government Association, said councils are finding it increasingly challenging to target services to prevent people reaching crisis point. Against a backdrop of welfare reforms and an overall funding gap that will exceed £5 billion by 2020, the government needs to restore funding to councils for welfare assistance schemes so they can provide the local safety net to help those struggling to cope with welfare reforms, including the rollout of universal credit. How can I help? JRF told it is urging the general public to call on the politicians to act on 3 solutions proposed by the charity: ending the freeze on benefits for working-age people, so they keep up with the cost of essentials; changing the use of sanctions within universal credit so people are not left destitute by design; reviewing the total amount of debt that can be clawed back from people receiving benefits, so people can keep their heads above water. What does the government say? A Department for Work and Pensions spokesman said, "Work is the best route out of poverty and our welfare reforms incentivize employment while having the right support in place for those that need it." Universal credit lies at the heart of our commitment to improve lives, and it is seeing people move into work faster and staying in work longer than under the old system. This report fails to take this into account, nor the recent improvements we have made to universal credit, including continuing to pay 2 weeks housing costs for claimants moving on to UC, removing the 7 waiting days, increasing advance payments to 100%, and extending repayment times to 12 months. Since 2010, 1 million people have been lifted out of absolute poverty and employment is at a record high, with 1,000 people moving into work every day. Meanwhile, we continue to spend £90 billion a year on welfare to support those who need it most. More for my disabled people losing out on £2,000 a year because of universal credit. Begin legal action. A man with epilepsy was sanctioned after missing his universal credit appointment due to seizures.